Hello and welcome to the Aquarius Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Aquarium Co-Op. Aquarium Co-Op is your one-stop shop for premium aquarium products to keep all your wet pets happy. Pick up top-quality foods like Extreme Krill Flakes, Hikari Vibrobites, or Aquarium Co-Op small fish and fry food. And as always, Aquarium Co-Op stocks a wide range of healthy and vibrant plants to add a splash of color and natural filtration to any aquarium. So head on over to www.aquariumcoop.com and check out all the goodies for yourself. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Thursday, September 16th, 2021. My guests today are returning guests Rosario, LaCorte, and Joe Ferdenzi. So this is Tropical Fish History, Part 3. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming back onto the podcast.
You're welcome, Randy. It's good to talk to you and Joe again.
Yeah, this is the...
Thank you, Randy. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, gentlemen. And this is the first podcast back from... Well, actually, I'm sorry. With you, gentlemen, from my Peru trip. So going down to the Amazon, surviving down there, and having a fantastic time. I say surviving down there, but it was a blast. It was great. Can't wait to go back or a different country and do more wild fish collecting. But the connections, like the people, the crew that we work with down in Peru are so fantastic that I'd love to see these guys again. And you know, I feel like it's not too far of a stretch to be like those are like my Peruvian friends. You know, those guys are like my Peruvian brothers, and I would love to go down there and collect with them again and get stung by pine needles and get stabbed by Pimlode catfish, like all of these like trials and tribulations that you go through when you're collecting fish. Like, you know, I'm in the water with them. Granted, they have more experience and they know what to do more with the seine or their dip nets. Like they're just, you know, they're 10 times the fish collector that I am. But you know, there's a certain camaraderie when you're both getting stabbed by the same fallen pine needle tree in the swamp, or you know, the same mosquitoes are eating you. Or the bugs are biting you. It's kind of cool, you know. So we've got that camaraderie. But enough about me, gentlemen.
Sounds like a real bonding experience. That's for sure.
Absolutely, I'm going to propose that as like corporate, like corporate bonding retreat. Like, don't go to some like nice ranch in Wyoming. Don't do that. Like, go down to Peru and collect fish in the jungle. If you really want to bond with your corporate peers.
So, and one question I got to ask you, Randy.
Absolutely.
Since you were down there, I know you ate quite a few different fish. One of the fish that I ate right on a boat when we were pretty hungry, we had not much else. We caught some Procholotus insignius, which is a beautiful characin, and it's known as the flagtail characin. Some of you may see it. It's in a lot of books. Very, very colorful fish. And it's an algae eater. And we cooked them in an open hearth, and they were just delicious. The only thing is, we only had two, and we had to share it between three of us. It was like, all right, you give me one bone, and I'll take the other bone. It wasn't much, but it was so good. But what I wanted to ask you, and one of the fish that I wanted to eat, which is supposed to be the Cadillac of the Amazon, is the Arapaima. Did you get a chance to eat any arapaima?
So I ate arapaima at one of the restaurants that is right along the Iquitos Riverwalk. And, you know, the reason why I'm kind of saying it's along the Riverwalk is that's typically kind of the more touristy restaurants. And so this particular restaurant will serve arapaima. They will serve peccary. They will serve caiman. So like all of the kind of like different, I think they might even have had guinea pig. I can't remember if they had... Maybe the first time they had guinea pig and I tried it. But yeah, they've got all the exotic foods. And the way they bring it out, it's very like family style. So you're just kind of like popping like nuggets into your mouth and you don't really know like what you're eating. But I know I definitely at some point had arapaima. All of those different meats were really, really good. I will say probably the best fish, and if you have any follow-up questions, Rosario, by all means, but the best fish to eat down there is going to be tiger shovelnose. So, and the local name down there for the particular tiger shovelnose will be doncella, and these things are amazing. Like this fish eats like a saltwater fish, and when you think about it, it's like this is kind of the apex predator catfish. I mean, they get enormous. Like these are monster catfish that can get up to what, like 5-6 feet, like massive, massive things. They're just down there sucking up other fish. I don't know if they're quite scavengers. Maybe they are eating dead fish, but like you would not think that fish would be good, but it was amazing. Whether they fry it up as little Dancea nuggets or you're having Dancea ceviche, it is phenomenal. Like such a good catfish. And the couple different types of tiger shovelnose, there's actually just the one that's the Dancea, and then the other ones are like, oh, okay, that's regular tiger shovelnose. I don't know the exact species off the top of my head. And then you've got the Dorado, the gold version. That one's also good, but not as good as the Dancea. So I would say like my number one fish to eat down there would be the Dancea. Pleco soup for breakfast is also really good. We had that the first trip. We didn't get any plecos the second trip. Like we thought we saw the floating pleco barge. We went up to it and it was actually a family. They had smoked plecostomus, but they didn't have. They actually were. I think they had a bunch of building material that they were taking somewhere. But it had looked very similar to the first trips. The first time we came across a pleco barge, so we weren't able to buy any on the river, which is a pretty novel experience. So no pleco soup, had piranha, had peacock bass, tucanare. I think tucanare is what they call the peacock bass.
Tucanare.
Yeah. And those both just kind of taste like a trout. But yes, to go back and to kick the dead horse, the tiger shovelnose is a supremely good fish. And maybe arapima, if I had some arapima ceviche, or maybe fresher. Maybe the restaurant doesn't have like the, straight out of the water, like a local fisherman just caught it. I think there's a lot of aquaculture for the arapima. So maybe, it's kind of like the same.
There is a lot.
Yeah, I've heard the comparisons of like, oh, when you eat ranched deer, it is nothing in comparison to wild deer. Same thing with elk. So maybe there's some of that involved. But it was.
There is a restaurant. Yeah, there is a restaurant here in New Jersey now that does sell arapima. You can get it. I don't know if they ship it up from Florida because they are culturing it in Florida now, I think. And I know they culture it in Brazil. Yeah, they do culture it. So at one time, it was against the law to catch them and eat them. They wanted you had to throw them back in because the natives are really thinning them and herd down.
Yeah,
but now I think they've got it down so pat. But there's a lot of fish farming now in Brazil. I've been to several fish farms. They do a great job. They're just like us, they strip them and all that by hand and fertilize them in addition, and have them go through a series of water changes and things like that until they get to a size, and then they can, feed on them.
Yeah, and I think the way Peru handles its export ban list is a little bit different than Brazil. And I'm no expert on this, but in conversation with our tour guide and some of the preparation documents for the trip, they do share an entire list of fish that cannot be exported out of Peru. And I believe that fundamentally those are food fish, as opposed to, that's more of an endangered fish that's over collected for the hobby. I think it's purely based on, no, those are local food fishes. We don't export those. So like the peacock bass, there were some very large Bricon tetras that we collected the first trip that we weren't able to bring back. And so I think it's more so for Peru, as opposed to, I think, where Brazil was a little bit more hypersensitive to things that are potentially exploited for the aquarium hobby, and then get put on a banned list for, to help them bounce back, as opposed to only banning things that are a food fish, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So, Rosario, what do you have for us today?
Okay. Well, I thought today I'd speak a little bit about the origins of how the Black Phantom got into the hobby. And the only reason I bring it up, I thought about this.
He's talking about the Black Phantom.
Black Phantom Tetra, yeah.
Some other kind of Black Phantom.
Yeah, the Hyphestobricon megalopterus, right? It used to be known as Megalomphotis megalopterus, but Weitzman changed it, and when he created put them in a genus Hyphestobricon where they belong. Anyway, I have a lot of beautiful pictures of all these fish. It's too bad there's not a video or a slideshow. And you can hear me. It'll probably be my last talk. In November, I'm going to be speaking in the Clark Library at the North Jersey Aquarium Society, of which I've been a member for many years. I haven't been to a meeting now in more than a year because of being hit with congestive heart failure, and I'm on oxygen, so I have to walk around with a tank. And, I'm closing in on 93, so I'm not a kid anymore. So it'll be...
And Rosario, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's going to be an in-person event that you're actually going to speak at?
Pardon?
That's actually going to be an in-person event that you will be speaking at?
Yeah, it's a club. It's a regular society meeting.
Yeah. So not like an internet Zoom call. So what I'm getting at is if anybody...
No, it's not. No, it's not a Zoom call. No.
Anybody in that like general area, like if you're within a 5-hour driving distance, I would be going to see Rosario talk, especially if you're saying, Rosario, this might be, one of your last in-person fish club presentations that you give. I mean, that seems very, very epic, and hopefully the club, maybe, I would hope they would have your blessing, but to, do a good job with maybe some video documenting that talk.
Yeah, I wish somebody would videotape it. I don't know if it will be. I'll have to check on that because I don't think I'll be speaking anymore. I don't think I'll be able to. First of all, I can't go too far away from home. That's only about 15 minutes from home, and my compressor will hold about 4 hours of oxygen. And what I can do, though, the good thing about it is I can plug it in and it can be recharged while I'm speaking. So even though it may not have say if I'm up to 70% on my oxygen level, I can plug it in, and then while I'm speaking, it'll go back up to 100. So it's not a problem as long as I'm there and I'm near an electrical outlet. So, yeah, I hope. I was thinking about that because I don't think I'll be able to go around too far anyway, because that's the closest society club, and I'm afraid to go too far because if I do run out of oxygen, the good thing about it, there is a special cable where you can plug into the cigarette lighter in an automobile. But it's still a risky thing if I'm too far away and there's a problem. I just don't want to take a chance on it. I don't want to worry my family.
Well, I'll put notes.
So anyway,
I'll put a link in the show notes of this episode. So hopefully that New Jersey Aquarium Club, they have a specific page for your talk, which I think a lot of fish clubs will do that. So I'll look for that. I'll link it in these show notes. So anybody on the East Coast or anybody interested in going to that talk, hopefully your club is receptive to this, but they could at least see the details around that.
Yeah, I think they would be interested because it's going to be a talk on me and some of the things that I've had happen to me over the years. Believe it or not, some of the subjects you may not be interested in. I'm going to be talking about baseball, which I was very interested in. I'll show you some of the early days of my when I thought I was going to be a professional baseball career. And some of that, and then there's pictures of some flowers, pictures of some insects, some close-up photography. So it's a little bit of everything, and I usually do that for the ladies who are not interested in fish. Awesome. That's what I do. I tell them, and some of the women have really responded very well to it. But anyway, we better get going with my show.
Yeah, get on with it, Rosario.
Yeah, all right. So here's how it started. Of course, some may or may not know, and I'm happy to be back here on a special podcast again with Joe and Randy. I don't know how much input I'm going to get from my two buddies, but if you want to jump in at any time, you're more than welcome. And but anyway, in 1958, and those were the days when I was really buddy with Herb Axelrod. He was just starting TFH. TFH was in its fledgling issues, and I was a good part of that. I used to bring fish to his office in Jersey City every second week. I'd bring
right TFH. When you say TFH, just so that your listeners know, Rosario said 1958 and was fledgling magazine. it was started. The first issue came out in September of 1952. So
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, you're right. And I met Herbie somewhere around 54 or so. And I get to be good friends with him. And I tell you, he had some good qualities, but unfortunately, he hurt a lot of people. And it's a good example of not what to do with your life. But anyway, I'm not here to destroy anybody's reputation. Well, I'm grateful to him. We got to be very good friends. And in 1958, he called me. He said, "Hey, I'm going to Brazil, and how would you like to go?" I said, "Oh, that'd be great." He said, "I'll pay for your ticket. The only thing is you'll have to pay for your hotel." I said, "That's fine." So he paid for the ticket, and we flew down in a Constellation. I remember sitting in the plane, and I said, "Hey, when we get back, maybe we should do a book on fish." He says, "No." He says, "You don't have the ability to do a book." He said, "But I could make you a star in any way you'd want." He says, "I could write about you, and you'd come out looking like $1 million, even though you don't know the first thing about fish." And so he already he just gave me an idea of what journalists can do. As you know, many journalists just sit in their office and make stories up. A lot of stuff you read in the newspapers is not always true. But anyway, that's besides the point. So we flew down in a Constellation. And that was the hot plane in those days. That was 1958. And we flew to Miami first, and then from there, we changed planes, and then we flew to Trinidad. And we were there for several days. And then we went to Rio, and then Sao Paulo. And I was there. This occurred all within a week or so. I could only get away for a certain amount of time. And we had our let me see, what was it? Our fourth child was Eileen, my youngest daughter. She was just 6 months old when I left, and my wife wasn't too happy about me leaving. And I said, "Hon, this is really a 1 in a million chances to really get a chance to go to Brazil." It was my dream from early boyhood, which is true. I really dreamed of going to Brazil. Never realized I would get to go there 7 times. But anyway, so we got to Brazil. And when we got to Rio, we did some collecting around here, and I met Antonio Carvalho. And I think I mentioned it in one of the podcasts where it's in the book that I hit it off great with him. I really liked this guy. He was a wonderful field naturalist, and he was by trade a herpetologist. He was never trained, but he was a self-taught man and very well-respected scientist in Brazil. And he described many different species. He did a lot of work with killies. He loved annual fishes. And anyway, he gave me a 4-part volume of Fowler's Freshwater Fishes of Brazil. And I think I mentioned it before. It was one of my prized possessions. And what was it, 2 years ago, Joe? Something like that. I think something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Before the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, before the pandemic, and Joe was able to get around yet. And I was laying in bed one night, and I said, I got this 4-part volume. And I realized that I was getting on in age. And I said, every good thing has to come to an end. And I realized, I don't know how long I'm going to hang on. I might have to be 100. I don't know. But so far, I was beating everybody in the family. And I said, boy, this is unusual. And so I gave Joe a call. I said, "Joe," I said, "this is my most prized possession." But I thought last night, I was thinking about it. I says, "If anything happens to me, my kids have no idea what these books are like. You will." I said, "So while I'm alive, I want you to have this set of Fowler's Freshwater Fishes of Brazil." I said, I think they're valuable. I really like them, and I hate to give them up, but I can't take them with me, and they're yours. So I gave them to Joe, and they're autographed by Carvalho, which makes it even more wanting to have a part of it. So anyway,
keep in mind that these, Rosario has given me many things. He's being modest when he says, when he's talking about this, because he's given me many, many things in the past, publications and everything, including something that used to belong to his father, which I had rebound, and which is some of these things I'm going to have them rebound so that they're better preserved, you know. And again, money has nothing to do with this. I mean, I don't sell books. I don't sell my things. I'm not in the business of that. These things, all these things that I have, including Rosario's books, I treasure them because they come from friends and they're full of memories, you know. So I thank Rosario for his generosity on that, and he's certainly right that I will treasure these things.
Yeah. So anyway, we got to São Paulo, and so I said to Herb on a plane, I said, when we get to São Paulo, I said we'll have to call Harold Schultz up, and so I thought Herbie might have known who he was. You ever hear of him? He says, no, I never heard of him. He says, well, I got the name from Alan Fletcher. Alan Fletcher used to be very close to him. And since Brazil didn't have a Kodak firm, he used to have to send his film up to Kodak in New York. And there he would have his film developed. And it would take several weeks before he got it back. You can understand it's not like it is now. You could do everything over the computer or send stuff out quickly. And they don't even do film anymore, really, unless it's something special. But anyway, when we got to São Paulo, I said, you know, Alan Fletcher told me that he was in São Paulo and that he takes care of his film. So, all right. When we got to São Paulo, I said, I don't have his phone number, though. I said, I don't even have his address. I wonder how we can get him. We figured we were going to look and see in the phone book. So we couldn't find a phone number in the phone book, but there was an address. We found an address. So Herb had a good idea to send him an email, not an email, but a telegram. He sent him a telegram and told him who we were and where we were and could we get together. And sure enough, that night he came to the hotel to meet us. And it's the first time we met Harold Schultz.
And this is Harold, by the way, just for the sake of your listeners. It's spelled with two A's. It's Harold, you know, not Harold with an O. And the other thing I just want to briefly mention, because Rosario spoke about Alan Fletcher being the contact with Harold. Ironically, Alan Fletcher was the editor at the rival magazine to TSH. He was an editor at the Aquarium magazine, the one that had been founded by William T. Innes back in 1932.
Right. And so go back a long time. And Alan was very generous in what he did. In fact, he even told me when he gave me the phone number, not the phone number, but his contact. He says, whatever you do, try not to have Herbie make any deals with him. I said, I'll try my best. And so here I was between two friends, but they were rivals in the business. And I had to walk a fine line. I didn't want to offend anyone. So anyway, we got there and so Herb was smart enough to send him an email, and he did get the email, and he came to the hotel. So we did some collecting, and but before we did any collecting, we went to his home, and he had a beautiful tank display. He had I forget what size it was. Now, I would say it would be about a 50-gallon tank, thinking back now, if I can recollect. And he had it very well planted. He had a nice eye for what the thing should look like. And I was flabbergasted because in those days, we had several Tetras, you know, the typical Tetras you'd find in a pet shop, glow lights, Serpes, black line Tetras, black Tets, stuff like that, little Von Rios. These were all very easily bred in Florida fish farms or by people, and people would sell them to the pet shops. It was a good business in those days. So anyway, he had all these new Tetras there. He had black Phantoms in there. He had some beautiful red Serpes, which eventually turned out to be, they described them years later, and they named them after Harold, and they're called Professor Brock and Harold Schultz. An exceptionally red form that has a very small humeral spot on the side, and they're very kind of true. They come out really red, and so he had so many different tetras that I never saw before. Some were still undescribed, and that was the first time we saw the wimpled piranha, which was the piranha that has a long, it's underslot jaw, and it's used for scraping scales. And then in Brazil they call them pesce de escama, which means scale-eating fish. And they would eat the scales off fish, and of course that would eventually kill them. They'd get infections, and so they weren't really a fish to have in a tank. I don't know how you could keep them survive so long, but I never kept them as a pet anyway. But they kind of made a big impression when they first came in because they were so unusual looking. But anyway, we took pictures of all that stuff. Herbie did because he was really into photography more than I was at the time, and used it for his magazine. So we saw a lot of tetras in there I had never seen before, and the black phantom was the one that really was outstanding because each time a male would pass another male, he would flare his fins and they would open up like a flower blossom. They were really beautiful and they're dark. I said, wow, what are these? He said, well, I don't know. I said, I don't have a name on it. So he offered them all to us. So I said, yeah, I'd love to have some of these. He said, oh, yeah, I can give you all you want if I get them in the Pantanal. And I don't remember now. There was the Mato Grosso in those days the Mato Grosso was one state. Brazil is like, I forget, I think they have like, I don't know if there's 24 states in Brazil. I don't remember now. I'd have to go back and check with that. But in those days, it was known as Mato Grosso. And then they changed it. I think it was a few years later. They call it the Southern Mato Grosso and the Northern. So there's the North and the South Mato Grosso. So they're made in two states out of them because they grew in population. And so anyway, he offered all these fish to us, and Herb carried them back to U.S., and I got all these fish. And so in December, that was in 1958. In 58, I spawned them, black phantoms, and wrote an article on it. And it appears in the DFH in 1959. There's an article that I wrote on the spawning of the black phantom tetra. But by then, I had broke with Herb. I mean, we just, not an argument, we just fell apart. And I'm kind of glad I did because it's a long story. I'm glad I did because it would have been a little bit of a hardship if I had stayed with him. Anyway, what happened was we didn't know the name of the fish. So as I was in a hotel room, our room was adjoining Herb and his wife. His wife was with him, Evelyn. And we had this young fellow, Ulf Hannertz. In fact, I think it was Joe. I think you were the one, Joe, that sent me the picture of him. He became a world famous. What was it, Joe? He was
he was actually a kid. I forget how old he was.
He was 15 when we had him.
Okay, yeah, he was like 15, and he won some contest in Sweden, some trivia contest, because he.
Oh yeah, that story I know.
Tropical fish,
yeah.
And Ulf Hanners, and so he used the money, I guess, from that he won on this Swedish game show to go on this trip.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about that because I know the whole story.
Yeah,
the story
that's
I'm
kind
talking
of awesome
about
that you met him.
was
he won a Swedish game show.
Yeah, no, he was 15. He was 15 years old, and Herbie dropped him off at my house one day because I guess Herbie had things to do and he didn't want to entertain a young kid, so he stuck me with him, and he was very shy, and he told me the story. He said he won $2,500 on the game show, which was it was the equivalent to our $64,000 question, which was a big show on TV in the early 50s, and that was the equivalent to our show, only they didn't give you as much money as in America as they did in Sweden. Anyway, he won $2,500, and he told me his questions were he had to identify all these different species of fish that they put in the aquarium, and that's how he won it. But he told me I happened to know what they were because they were my friend's fish, and I knew all the fish. So there's a little bit of a, devious thing on his part. He already knew what the answers were, and he won $2,500. So with that money, his parents must have been very liberal because they allowed him. Can you imagine letting your 15-year-old son go to Nigeria without knowing anybody?
Wow.
To go down there to collect fish. He went and he bought the whole outfit. He had an Australian Outback hat, with the one side folded.
Yeah.
And he wore that, and he had the shirt with all the pockets in it, and he had the whole outfit, but he never went in the water. He was afraid to go in the water, and he had people collecting for him. And I have to hand it to him, though. I mean, it takes a lot of nerve for a kid to go off to Africa. I mean, who would ever think of going to Africa, or even his parents allowing him to do that? I mean, I'd shudder to let my kids do something like that. But anyway, he was in the room with me.
My mother wouldn't even let me join the Boy Scouts. No, forget that. Okay.
I know that's the way it was in those days. They were very careful, But anyway, so I'm thumbing through the book, The Fowler's Freshwater Fishes of Brazil.
Hey, Rosario,
and I'm looking.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it's funny because you we're talking about growing up in what, the 50s and 60s, right, Joe? And the idea that back then, at least my perception is that you guys could just do whatever the heck you wanted. Like you'd hop on your bike with the banana seat, slap a baseball card in the spokes, and you would just have your you would just run the town and do whatever you want. Where now it's oh no, you have to be. We've got the GPS lock. We know where the kids are. We're tagging them through the iPhone software.
Yeah.
And then to hear you say that there were still super protective parents that were like, oh, no, you can't even join the Boy Scouts. You're not going to go starting fires in the woods.
Well, you're right about one thing, though, Randy. My mother, given her background and everything, she didn't want to hear anything about me living in the woods or in a tent, okay? Because, she had come from the old country, Italy, where people still lived in hovels back in the day. And, she came to America for a better life. So she wasn't going to let me go roughing it in some forest or something. But around the neighborhood, yeah. I mean, you would go out after school and your parents had no idea where you were. We could have been doing any kind of crazy thing, and often were, and your parents didn't know where the hell you were.
Okay, so true. That's still true. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I thought you guys were about to...
True.
You're about to shake my understanding of the generational differences of our upbringings.
No.
All right, Rosario.
I mean, we used to go on the subway, me and my 15-year-old friend, or actually even younger, 13 years old. We'd go on the subway, the New York City subway, and travel all the way into Manhattan to go to the Aquarium Stock Company, that famous store. And my parents, they had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. As long as everybody had this rule in the neighborhood, you had to be home for dinner. If you weren't home for dinner, then they would call out the mounted police, all right? But if you got home in time for dinner, then everything was, you could be anywhere doing anything. This is true. It has changed completely. I know, because I got two grandsons. I know how my daughter is with them and everything. But you're right, Randy. Once upon a time, that's the way it was.
All right.
Anyway, back to the Black Phantom Tetra.
Yeah, back to fish talk.
Ahead, Rosario.
Thank you guys for indulging me.
Anyway, I guess that was the story. He knew what the names of the fish were, and that's how he won his money. But anyway, so he was in a room with me, and I'm thumbing through Fowler's Freshwater Fishes of Brazil, and I get to this one page in the book on Carrisons, and lo and behold, there's a sketch of a black phantom. It's pretty darn good. I said to Ulf, I turned to Ulf, I said, Ulf, that's the fish Harold Schultz gave us. That's the black phantom there. I said, looks just like it. It had the humeral spot, the big dorsal fin, and there's no question about it. And it had Megalymphos megalopterus. It was described. I don't know if it was Fowler that described it or Eigenmann, or I forget who it was, who was the original author, but it's been known for quite a few years. And this is 1958, so it's way beforehand, but nobody's been down here to collect them, to have them in the hobby as far as exporters are concerned. So that's how we got them. I brought the first ones back and bred them in 59, wrote an article in 58, and then spawned them in 58, and then wrote an article in 59. But by then, I had broken wood axelrod, and as I said, it's a long story what happened. I'm glad it happened because it turned out better for me and later on in life. And that's another story we don't get into. Anyway, and so I told Herbie the next morning, I was excited. I said, Herbie, you know what the name of that fish is? It's Megalomphotis megalopterus. And I showed him, I don't think so, Herb. I said, that's the fish, no question about it. Well, it turns out I was right. And he wasn't very good at sometimes identifying things. He was not too sharp on some of the stuff. Anyway, so that's how the fish was, we got to know the name. And Black Phantom, that name was given by Harold Schultz. He's the one that came up with that name. And so we used that name, and it stuck. And they were kind of easy to
name.
Yeah, it really is.
So it was a very appropriate name, and that's where they come from. They come from that area, and they come from north of the area. Also, they come from Bolivia. The females are smaller, and they have a red anal fin. Now, at one time, when I used to collect. I had some Daphne holes out in we call it the meadows, and that was part of Newark Airport. Now, I only lived about 15 minutes away from Newark Airport. And the meadows was a real large meadowland. It was still all marshland. And I used to go down this road, and I had a couple of Daphne holes. I had a big Daphne pond that I had no competition. I used to get Daphne there. And across the road, there was another big pond. It was all rainwater. It was cooler, and the sun very seldom hit it because it was a big hill behind it, and that blocked the sun from coming down unless it was high noon, and then it would get a little bit. The water was kind of deep, and it was a little cooler than the water that the Daphne came from. And in that water was just nothing but glass larvae. So I had a choice of tons of Daphnia, tons of glass larvae. And then on the road one time, I stopped. I said, I'm going to look behind that little the parcel of marshland there, and I looked behind it, and there's a pond. And you wouldn't believe the mosquitoes in there. I must have taken 5 or 10 pounds of mosquito larvae out the first day. And I wouldn't take it in the house, of course. I had the fish house then. And I fed everything just mosquito larvae. And I kept it in big refrigerator liners. And I'm sure a lot of it got away, but I tried to use it all up before they became winged and then fly away. So, I mean, the food source I had that's what made me, I think, very successful in reproducing a lot of fish. I had a very good source of diets for the fish. And
live food played such a big part of the hobby back in the early days.
It sure was.
Now it's kind of dying out. But, I just want to get back to the Black Phantom for a second, because that is currently, one of the most popular aquarium fish there is. It's very hard to walk into a local pet shop, aquarium store, and not see Black Phantoms on sale. It's a very in-demand fish. It's bred by the thousands, in fish farms in the Far East and everything. And yet, here's the guy. We're talking to Rosario LaCorte, who is the only guy still alive who knows the story inside out of how this one of the most popular aquarium fish got into the hobby. A lot of people may be keeping it, breeding it, but they don't know how it got into the hobby. So now here we have it recorded, how it got into the hobby. And to me, it's a fascinating story of contacts and, how one person leads to another person who, who has the fish right in his living room because he's living in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
And then Rosario's like the first person to breed it.
Yeah, I love. Joe, I'm glad you're doing this, and because I wanted to at least come back on and touch on it as well. That the way Rosario casually talks about bringing it in, like he's telling us the story, right? And he's mentioning and I bred it, and I wrote the article about it, and I was the first person to do it in a very casual manner. And it's like, man, that's really impressive, Rosario. Like that's history. That's ultra impressive. And like you're saying, this is not like some super obscure killifish or something like that. This is a very mainstay, like incredibly popular and incredibly beautiful fish in our hobby.
It is. It's a mainstay too. It's really stuck. It really made a big impression on aquarists, and many people have it just for its beauty. It's a very beautiful fish. And then here's another part of the story. Further down this road, they expanded this huge amount of land, and the Newark Seaport is in that area, and they were developing even more because there's a lot of cars at that time were coming in to Newark Seaport, and they were bringing cars in from the far east and Germany. A lot of Volkswagens came in here, Port Newark, and you could see them all lined up. So they were reclaiming a lot of land that was there. And so anyway, I was driving down this road one day at Bookie to Port Newark, and I see this huge mound of dirt. And I said, gee, I never saw that dirt before. What's that? So I parked the car and I walked up the hill, and what's behind it was it was a long strip of a pond. And I don't know if I talked about this in one of the other podcasts, but the pond was kind of long and narrow, and it led out to Newark Bay, which is a brackish water. It would be a brackish waterway. So I put my net in the water, and this might be a good thing. So I didn't get a Daphnia, but it came up with pounds and pounds of Cyclops. I said, wow. I've collected fish many times. I mean, not fish, but crustaceans. I've never collected Cyclops like this. Now, I know there are places from the Far East because Zoo Med puts out, I think they sell Cyclops. I think they heat them up, though, and if you notice.
They sell it in a can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they sell it in a can, and they come out red. So, which is the carotenoids that are in it, and that will change. It's like the crab. You cook a blue crab, and what happens when you cook it? It's red. It's the carotenoids in it that really come out. And you always hear me talking about carotenoids and its importance in the coloration, the pigmentation of fish. So I came home with all these Cyclops, and I just so happened I had a couple of big spawns of black phantoms. So I start pumping that into them almost every day. And lo and behold, my friend Fred Glody was one of my best friends. The kids called him Uncle Fred. He was a friend for many years, and there's a picture of him in a book netting some Daphnia in his backyard pond. And he comes in, he says, what's this? Is this a new fish you got here? I said, no, they're black phantoms. What do you think of that? I said, look at the color in those females. Their anal fin was brilliant red. And because of the Cyclops were green, feeding off the algae and that's what turned them kind of red down there. They were getting a lot of carotenoids from the algae. And so I couldn't, and one of the things I made a mistake, I didn't photograph it. And here I was really into photography, and I missed so many wonderful pictures over the years that I could have photographed, so I had a recording of it, and I didn't do it. But I never forgot that, and I had this wonderful coloration. Now, I have a feeling that's what may have happened with the fish that were collected in Bolivia much years later. I'm trying to think of my friend's name, and I can't think of it now. Him and a bunch of guys bought a strip of land down there, and it was really confiscated, nationalized it. The Bolivians nationalized it when the communists took over. So they nationalized his land and took it away from him. But he had a big strip of land there with a house on it and all that, and he had a housekeeper taking care of it. And so
what part of Bolivia,
in the conversation,
Rosario, what part of Bolivia is that in? I've got it just pulled up on Google Maps and just for my own curiosity.
I don't remember where it was. He did tell me, and it's so many years ago now.
Was it like probably somewhere along like the northeastern border between Bolivia and Brazil, I'm guessing?
I would probably say so because they had to, since the Black Phantom comes from that area,
right.
It would have to be connected to the Pantanal because I know the river system does empty down into the Pantanal. I think it's part of the Paraguay system. I'm not sure. I don't have the map in front of me. I'm going by my what I can remember.
No worries. Sorry for the interruption.
But anyway, the color was exquisite because I was feeding nothing but Cyclops. And so they were bantering this about on Facebook several weeks ago, and I did have some correspondences with Lucanus, and I mentioned the reason why I was contacting him, because we were old friends, and I wanted to see how he was doing besides. And he said that they were talking back and forth, and people were saying that the black phantom is actually red in the wild, and when they came in, they were collected and brought in. They were bred, and then the black form was bred from wild stock. I said that's the farthest from the truth. There's no. That's nonsense. There's nothing truthful about that. And I said, this is the reason why I came up with this idea. Let's record this and get the oral history correct on this, because that's not true. They weren't bred that way. That's the way they are in the wild. They are black in the wild. Another thing Harold Schultz told me about, which was very interesting, when he saw mine, because the following year Harold was in my house, and he saw the black phantoms I was raising, he said to me, Rosario, says, the black phantoms are really big. He says, I never see them in a while like that. They're always small. And he says, and then sometimes during the dry season, it can get pretty cold there. It can go into the upper 40s. And he says, sometimes there'll be a big fish kill. There's a certain name that Brazilians call them. I don't remember the name they use, but it's a big fish kill. A lot of fish die. Fortunately, a lot of rivers are spring fed, because I've been in some rivers where the springs come out of the bottom of the riverbed at full force. You can feel it. It can almost sweep you away. And the water is always warmer down below. And I think in some areas where the fish are preserved, the fish that are in the upper levels, and where it gets colder and there's no spring feeding or overflow of other rivers, naturally they're going to die from the cold weather. It's a little too cold for them. Like if it reaches into the upper 40s, they're not going to last. It's going to kill them. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. He said, there is a big fish kill. He says he's seen a lot of rivers where the fish were all dead. And but he says in a while he's never seen black phantoms that are big like this. Now, we didn't talk about it last time, but Ava Lucanus put out a video, and there's 30 new tetras that were being collected from the Pantanal.
Yeah, I think we actually did.
You mentioned it.
Yeah, and I have it linked.
You mentioned that black one with the white edging on the fins.
Yeah,
it's a great video.
There's some really magnificent looking fish there. And according to Oliver, he says that they're getting into these areas now where they could never get into before. He says, but unfortunately, they're doing so much restructuring of the land that they're destroying a lot of the land mass, and it's killing a lot of stuff off. And he's afraid that some of these areas are so restricted with the types of fish they have in there, they might get eliminated completely, and you won't see them at all. So they're trying to collect them, and I know Asians seem to have a contact to get all this stuff. But the only thing that bothers me about Asians, everything is money, and it just makes me boil, because I know money is important for an economy. But I don't know what they're worried about. I mean, they'll only send males. Like when the blueberry tetra first came in, they got them first, and they were selling for a high price, but they only send males. Well, I mean, come on, that's kind of dirty. You're sending people fishing, and you think they're going to breed them, and they're trying to figure out what the hell's sex on these things. Well, they can't sex them because they're all males.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. I got the blueberry tetra from Luck. My friend Steve White happened to get a female by accident, and he got a little spawn out of him, and he was able to give me a female, and that's how I got the breed. And I raised quite a few of them. Just from that one female I got from Steve, and I did very well with the blueberry tetras. That was one of the cases that get this new stuff, and they don't release them, and we can't compete with them in the first place. First of all, they have the warmth of the weather in their favor. They have a lot of warm weather. They don't have to worry about that. The water is not a problem for them. I remember one of my friends that went to the Far East, he said that they change the water twice on discus. They don't even have air stones or air filters or any box filters in their tanks. I don't know if they all do this, but some of them may do it. Some may have filters. But for what he saw, my friend, this is like 50 years ago now, he used to get free tickets from the airlines because he did like $100,000 worth of business a year, and the airlines would give him a gift every year to go wherever he wanted to. So he went to the Far East to see how they bred discus. And he told me they fill the discus tanks up twice a day and empty it twice a day, and they're flopping on the bottom of the tank. They fill them back up with new water. They don't have to worry about chlorine or anything. The water is nice and warm, and they send a guy out with a bicycle. He'll have 3 or 4 boxes, styrofoam boxes on the back of the bike, and he'll come back with a box full of tubifex, daphnia, mosquito larvae, and whatever he can find. And that's what they have, lots of live food. So they don't have a problem. We can't compete with that. Who here in the United States has that? You might few and far between. You might be some guys near a farm where they might be raising pigs, and there's a pond there, and you got daphnia there, like Sea Caucus here in New Jersey. Used to be known as the pig farm area. When you went down a turnpike, you had to hold your nose with a clothespin that stunk so bad from the pig farmers. But they had daphnia holes all over the place. The guys used to go there and get daphnia. It was an inexhaustible amount of daphnia because of the farming and the spill off from the water. Because that's all been cleaned up because the environmentalists. The Passaic River was another river that was one of the dirtiest rivers in the United States, but you can get tons and tons of daphnia out of that river because they were feeding on raw newspaper pulp that was being pumped into the river, and they were feeding on that.
Yeah, that's a weird kind of irony there with the runoff from farming and like wood pulp that, not great for the water system itself, but the aquarists are actually benefiting because of the abundance of daphnia and the other critters that feed off of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, if you remember in one of the podcasts, I remarked about the Delaware River. There was a guy down there you could buy a quart of tubifex for $2. But what was happening was Campbell's Soup was there, and they used to throw all their skins, and they used to pump all their remains into the Delaware River, and the tubifex fed on the tomato product, and that's what they fed on. So this guy, there was carpets and carpets of tubifex in the bottom river, and he just would rake it up, and then he'd bring him in, and he'd have water running on him to purge him. And I think I told you how to separate that from the mud. I won't get into that again. It's in one of the podcasts. But there was all kinds of food. So they have an inexhaustible supply of live food. We can't compete with them anymore. So it's annoying that they're sending a lot of these fish in, but they're not sending females. It's killing the joy of it. I mean, and some people are paying like $30 and $40 for a single fish. Not really fair to me.
Yeah, we've got some theories
charge that kind of money, and then you don't have a chance to breed them at all.
Yeah, I took home some. Are they the Agassizi fire red epistogrammas? And in talking with Corey and Robert and even Dean, so some guys from kind of Aquarium Co-op, we're thinking that maybe that is one of the varieties that they actually don't send females. They always send males. And so what would you think is a female and what never develops any sexual dimorphism is actually just sneaker males, right? So you always have like the one dominant male. You'll have kind of like the secondary, well, at least in my experience, you've got like that secondary one where you're like, yeah, that guy's probably another male too. You see a little bit. And then you've got a couple of the other ones much smaller. You think they're female, but you kind of do all the same things that you've done with other epistogrammas to breed them, and yet nothing, like it just doesn't happen. And so maybe that could actually be one of the cases of they purposely, like they know which ones are the females, and they do their best to not let females actually come over when those are purchased and exported.
I think I heard too. No, I don't know how true this is, but they may be pretty sharp on. They may have they may have actually people that are educated in the colleges that know what to do. But from what I heard, this is going back many years. They said they were able to actually feed them hormones or treat them with hormones where you could say you had a spawn of 100 fish. You could take 50 of them and put them in a separate tank and feed them this, get this hormone into them, and then you would produce all males, or you'd get all females. And that's how they prevented it from being bred if you sent them out of the country. That protected them.
Yeah.
So I don't know how true that is.
Well, I mean, you see that in nature where, let's see here, off the coast of California, there's the sheep's head fish. It's this, like the males are funky. They have like a giant nuchal hump. They've got these crazy canine.
Sheephead minnow? Sheephead minnow,
what
isn't it you're talking about?
It's a sheep's head fish.
Brenadon?
Coral. No, it's a saltwater fish. Let me see here. Saltwater.
Saltwater.
It's in the kelp beds. I would catch them outside of San Diego and La Jolla. The California sheep's head, which hopefully that was legal to catch, which I'm pretty sure it was. But that's one of the fish where when there's a dominant male, like you just have the male. When the male goes away, a female will actually go through the sexual reproduction change process and become a male. Right, so like we kind of know that fish in amphibians and these other like animals are capable of doing that. So it's not a very far stretch to think that in a university somewhere they have figured out how to feed a hormone to a group of fish and suppress like reproductive development or whatever it is, or maybe it's even something as simple as temperature, right? Because there's certain fish where I don't know how proven this is, but like
temperature does affect.
Yeah. So maybe it could even be that like they figured out that that 1 degree difference is going to give us all males, right? And males in that species look better, right? So if we're trying to sell a bunch of centerpiece fish to consumers, like of course you're going to want the males, right? So I could see the nefarious reasons, but then also just like the pure market driven reasons of
Listen, my friend Steve Grubel, who used to own Cameo Pet Shop, which was, at the time it closed, it was the oldest pet shop in New York City, having been established in 1947. When I'd walk into his store and look at tanks, he'd sometimes come up to me and he'd say, "See that tank, Joe? That's M.O." And M.O. meant males only. Because he had learned over many years in the business, he would go to the wholesaler and pick out all the fish himself, which was very labor intensive, but that was the old fashioned way. He believed in picking out fish, but he would often just buy only the males because he knew that the average customer is not interested in breeding fish. They just want pretty fish. And as you just said, usually that means the males. So he would have these tanks and he would tell me, "Yeah, Joe, that's M.O."
Yeah.
Well, the pistogrammers are easy to, if you raise the pistos in a lower temperature, you can get all males. That's happened with me. I have to look for that picture. I have a picture. I must have about 150 pistogram, what was it that I had in there? Cockatoides, I think. And they were all males. And I found out later that if you raise them, and you spawn them and then you raise them in water, that's about 79 degrees, not 79, but about 72 or 73, you'll get all males. And if you go around 79 or 80, then you'll get an even split. And I've done that, and that's true. And the reason for that is if you go to the Amazon is at the equator, and the average temperature is between 79 and 80, 82. So if you just, like I always said, and then some of the other podcasts, lay in bed at night and think of what happens in a while. And in a while, the Amazon is on the equator mostly, and the temperature is in that range bracket. And that's what you want to do because that's what will affect the sex. The sex ratio is determined by the temperature. And it did work for me. When I went to 80 degrees, I got almost an even split on the pistos because I used to raise a lot of pistos at one time also. And I got a better cross section of both sexes that way.
Yeah, and from my own experience of just being in the Amazon in the water, when you get towards like the center of a channel, whether it's a small stream or a larger part of body, like you'll get cooler water and you'll get various like the temperature grade. But typically, where you catch a pistos, I mean, they're in they're in the cover area, right? They're in more shallow areas, which are going to be warmer.
Well, they're there for a reason too. The predators are in a deeper channel.
Yeah.
So most of the small fish will be along the bank. That's a strategy they use to prevent cannibalism, where other fish from eating them. Because some of the big catfish are down it's pretty deep in the Amazon. I forget what it is. I don't know, 65 feet or something like that.
Yeah, I guess
there's a lot of stuff down there still undescribed.
Yeah, wet season versus dry season, maybe, because when I've only been down there in not the driest part of the dry season, but definitely dry season, and you see 20, 25 feet of water line. You're like, oh, okay, here's where the Amazon currently is, and then here's actually where it could go. Like, you see that high level water line mark on the tree trunks, like very high up on the tree trunks. So we're looking at.
I have some pictures of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, like just how much of a water swing you can get between the wet and the dry season.
Plenty of water. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. So
you can see the water line. That shows you just how much water is coming off the Andes. I mean, that's where the snow melt starts. That's where all that starts up in the Andes, and that's all snow melt coming down.
Oh,
those are the headwaters.
It's insane. The height difference between low and wet season, and then the fact that it's spreading out over across the land is just absolutely. It's not like it's within a levee bank, right? Like, okay, here's a levee on both sides. I see a high water mark. I see a low water mark. Oh no. This water is just like spreading out everywhere. This is like it's not really contained. It just gets that high and it just goes everywhere. It is. I don't even know how they calculate the amount of water that can actually flow through there in a high season. Like, it's just. I'm sure I could probably Google it and they would have an estimate, but like how they would even swag that seems insane to me. So, Rosario, we are approaching the 1 hour mark, and I am thrilled that we got a chance to kind of unpack and understand the Black Phantom Tetra story. Super cool of, how it all started with you going down there and, on this collecting journey. And then all of a sudden you see this fish in a Brazilian's tank, and that is the start of this beautiful fish that's a mainstay in the hobby coming back to us, and your experiences breeding it. Joe, do you have any kind of recaps, anything you want to say in closing on this episode, on our part 3 of the tropical fish history?
No, I just think it's great that we're doing this, and Rosario's got plenty more stories that will tell people how things got started. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, maybe podcast episodes for the Aquarius podcast, like 100 to 200, like 50% will just be Rosario recounting his stories. And that'll help me get to the 200 mark.
You'll have no trouble.
Yeah.
And so the teaser. So Rosario, don't go into any details, but let's give the audience a teaser. What are we going to talk about next time?
I think we'll talk about how the little Amandite Tetra, that's kind of a story that's hidden somewhere in the cloud somewhere that nobody can see.
So that's Hyphesum bricon.
Another popular Tetra.
Yeah,
Hyphesum bricon Amandae.
The Ember Tetra.
There's a story that was told about how that was named, which is really, really not true. Like I said, the story is up in the cloud, but guess what? Rosario was in the next cloud, and he saw what was going on 3 years before it happened. So I saw the Amandite Tetra in 19.
Oh, you're teasing too much. You're already teasing too much, Rosario.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it. We'll keep it at that. And I'm going to tell you the real story on how the Amandite Tetra was named. And I already had a deposit in the Smithsonian, but somebody in Europe knew the right guy.
He's already going too far. Rosario's already going too far.
So I won't say any. I just leave it at that, and
Yeah.
I'll leave
Awesome.
your tongues hanging, and I'll tell you the real story.
International intrigue.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
And,
leave it at that.
and then I'm sure
I'm glad we're doing this oral history because I don't know how long I'm going to be around here. So let's keep doing it. I'm willing to do it. I can still talk and I can still remember. So I'm looking forward to the November trip to the Clark Library. And this is going to be a very interesting program. I think it's unlike anything I ever gave. And I forget what, let me see. My first talk I ever gave was, I think, in 1953 or 54. And I shook like a leaf in the wind when they asked me to do it. But that's another story. And I wrote all about that in a book. But I'm going to be giving a talk in November, and I don't think I'll be giving any more talks. It's really hard for me to get around. All of a sudden, my left knee has really been giving me a lot of trouble, and I'm really hurting. I'm just sitting with my feet up on a hassock, and I'm very comfortable right now, not in pain. So
good.
I'm kind of comfortable, and I'm talking about my favorite subject. So this is great.
All right, folks. And yeah, I love that, Rosario. And I just want to one more time give people a notice. So we're at September 16, 2021. Rosario is going to give a talk in November. When exactly in November, Rosario? What's the date?
Oh boy, let me see. I don't have a date yet. Let's see.
They have a website, the North Jersey Aquarium Society.
Yeah, you probably go there.
Which Saturday. They meet on a Saturday afternoon.
Okay. I Googled it. I don't think they have. I was on their website. They didn't have it up yet. They had a posting for their September, maybe their October, but they didn't have November up yet. So
no, it's not yet.
Yeah,
but it's always the same Saturday.
Okay.
It's always it's like the second Saturday, the third Saturday.
All right, let's figure this out.
It's always the same. Yeah.
Hold on, we can do this.
And I'll tell you the nice thing about the North Jersey Club, it's the only club that I ever saw that gives you a nice full hot meal. Can you imagine getting a hot meal too besides to see a program?
Hey, I'm a sucker for food.
I never heard of anything.
All right.
It's unbelievable.
So they have Saturday, October 19th. They're going to have Anton Lambouge talk about West African cichlids. The 19th of October is the, let's see here, that would be the hold on. What's going on here?
The 16th of October.
Hold on. Is that 2020? Are they that far behind on updating this thing? Oh, come on, North Jersey Aquarium Society. Oh, man. Their stuff is like back in 2019. Uh-oh. So then I guess if I went back to 2019 and looked at that, okay. All right. Well, hopefully between now and then, North Jersey updates some of their stuff. If anybody that is a part of North Jersey Aquarium Society, we're doing our best to plug Rosario's talk in November. So help me help your club so we can figure out and promote it. And hopefully some people that otherwise wouldn't come to a North Jersey club might actually make a trip out to see Rosario speak one last time in public. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm already going to look, like, once I know the date, I might look at some flights and see maybe if I could swag a flight out to into Newark and pop in for a day and see you talk, Rosario.
That'd be terrific.
That might be a stretch for me, but I'm not going to lie. I'm going to look into this.
Very good. It might be a good deal.
Yeah, I think so. I've got some Alaska miles still banked. So
then I know Joe would come. Out, right, Joe?
Yeah, you don't know where my wife is with this COVID thing. She's
that's
at
true.
DEFCON 1. Okay, and if I want to live at home.
We'll have to wrap you in cellophane.
Yeah, she'll have to wrap me in cellophane and aluminum foil.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. All right, gentlemen. Well, on that note, we will talk. I'm sure that we will talk again between now and that November talk, Rosario. So we will be able to update the folks on some more details on that one. But nonetheless, like if you're remotely interested, you've got at least a solid month and a half of planning to do to try to make it out to the North Jersey November Club talk and maybe pick up some goodies from an auction. But most importantly, watch Rosario talk and hear what he has to say one last time in public. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been an absolute blast.
Hey, thank
you. All right.
All right, Rosario, you have a
Take
good
care,
one.
everybody out there in internet land. Have fun. We'll see you next time.